Outside the Box.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is May 22nd, 2011. I'm very excited to be with you tonight. We are having, again, a second discussion tonight with the author of the book, The Grandest Deception, that was on Outside the Box last week. His name is Dr. Jack Pruett. So we're actually going to be talking with him over the course of the next hour instead of covering the news in the first part, because he's covering a lot of very interesting issues and subject matter in his book, which we will talk about tonight. The Annunaki, ancient astronauts, the true power behind the Illuminati, and what it means for us today, if all of this is true. Looking at our world today, this construction of a new world order, and so we're going to be looking deeper into the rabbit hole, because I think that's what we need to do at this point, when things are certainly as strange as they are. And so his book can be found over at thegrandestdeception.com. And we'll briefly go over a little bit about him. Again, he lives in a rural area in southeast Texas with his wife. They run a small medical clinic near Houston, Texas. He spent many years studying the Bible, the works of Zechariah Sitchin, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and various scriptures of a religious or spiritual nature. Dr. Pruett believes that ancient astronauts came to Earth in our distant past, and that they created mankind, and that they and their descendants run the world today. So it's a very interesting idea. He's not the only one to talk about such issues. Michael Tellinger he's going to be on the show again on June 19th, 2011. He'll be speaking on the 24th. There are also many others that are lecturing around the world on these particular subjects, and the very fact that more and more humans are interested in such history indicates that maybe there may be some shift in consciousness taking place. But again, I'm only speculating. But with that, let's go ahead and talk with Jack, who is on the line from Texas. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Alex.
Well, thanks for coming on tonight in the second interview. And could you kind of bring us up to speed for those that didn't catch the show last week, what your book's about and some of the stuff that we covered last week?
Yes, my pleasure. I would just say, first of all, to your audience that Alex did give me the hookup to the YouTube video that I watched the interview last week, and one thing was apparent very quickly, that I don't talk as fast as Alex does, and so I wasted a lot of his airtime. I don't know if I can do it or not, but I'm going to try to talk faster tonight so we can get as much information to you as possible. But my book basically was based initially on work done by Mr. Zechariah Sitchin and ancient tablets that were found in the lands of the Bible. These ancient tablets actually describe in great detail how our Earth and solar system were formed. They go into great detail about how mankind was actually created as a slave race to do the work for the Annunaki, primarily mining gold. And the first Adam that they created was sterile. They used these people to mine gold for over 100,000 years. The slave race that they were creating, though, was actually creating problem because they couldn't create us fast enough. They decided to do a little genetic engineering, and they altered mankind in such a way that we could reproduce. At that point in time, we find that story in Genesis in the Bible, although it is altered and is somewhat deceiving about eating from the tree of knowledge. Mm-hmm. However, once mankind was given the ability to reproduce, the Anunnaki were living in what they called the Eden, E.D.I.N. This was the lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And of course our Bible calls that the Garden of Eden. They decided they needed some house slaves and some slaves to tend their gardens and take care of the fields and crops and so forth, so they moved some people to the Eden. However, Enlil, who was in charge of the earth operation, decided that mankind was too noisy and boisterous, and they knew that a natural disaster was going to occur which would flood the earth, and that was caused by the return of their planet Nibiru, which shook the earth in such a way that the ice caps at both north and south poles were disturbed, and the earth was flooded. However, Enlil's half-brother Enki told a person in the Sumerian language who was named Ziusudra how to build a submarine. Our biblical Noah. The submarine was built, the egg and sperm from animals were placed on board, quick frozen, as was seeds and various plants and so forth, and that occurred about 13,000 years ago, 11,000 BC. Once the water subsided, when the Anunnaki returned to Earth, the leader Enlil was very disturbed that mankind had been saved and was very unhappy about that. But those ancient tablets describe all those stories and many other stories that we find in our Bible in great detail. And I think if one does the research and spends the time, most people would agree with me that we have very good evidence now what happened on our earth prior to the flood. The Anunnaki initially came here about 450,000 years ago. Their lifespans are so much longer than ours because their planet orbits our sun every 3,600 years. So 3,600 Earth years is equivalent to only one Nibirian year. And so these people, I have other evidence. My belief is that their average lifespan is probably around 500,000 years. So it's quite easy to understand how ancient man would think that these people were gods, especially since they're so much further advanced than we are. They didn't age during the entire lifespan of a human. And so that takes us up to our Bible. Our Bible basically says very little about the first 4.5 billion years of the earth and what happened during those years, and says very little about the Anunnaki. It does say in the 6th chapter of Genesis that the Nephilim, who were the Anunnaki, cohabited with the daughters of man, and that their offspring became the mighty men of the earth and the leaders and the rulers. That continues today. Those descendants of those people, I believe, control our world today, run our world today, control us, and they have very little regard for human life. Our Bible actually states that man is of little value or no value because our breath is in our nostrils. You'll find that verse in my book. And what that means is because our lifespan is so short compared to theirs that we're of not much value to them individually. At any rate, the Christian Bible, the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, the Bible of the Muslims, the ancient scriptures of the Hindus and Buddhists, the Book of Mormon, all of these religious scriptures were actually written by the Anunnaki. And that's difficult for us to accept. It took me 12 years to accept that fact, but I think we now have the proof that that is the fact. And so we live in a world that is very deceitful, very dishonest. And if you look at our Bible, it becomes very glaring very immediately. I think that ever since the flood, the Anunnaki have kept mankind at war with each other, and we continue to kill each other by the hundreds of thousands. And there's just story after story after story in the Bible of these different wars that we have been deceived into fighting for the Anunnaki, which are really part of a family feud that were going on between the two half-brothers. So with that, I think that what I would like to talk about tonight, if we could, is more how that relates to current events and current affairs, and what mankind needs to do if we're going to survive as a race of beings. If you really understand the book of Revelations in our Bible, I think that it is quite apparent that the Annunaki have in store for us some very bad outcome. They plan to exterminate mankind almost completely from the face of the earth, except for a few slaves that they're going to basically turn into what I call biological robots to do the work that they will need, and they will take over the earth. If mankind doesn't learn the truth and see whether there is a way that we can alter the fate that they have planned for us.
Well, at this point in the game, we can see that there is some sort of an intelligent force that is operating behind government. Many today debate on what that force is, but the question does arise, is this a force that we fully understand? You know, when you look at what's been taking place for thousands of years, many people say, well, there can't be a conspiracy. No human can be that organized. But then we come back down to the original question, is it actually man steering some of these events? And you talk about these wars. So we see repeatedly certain particular ethnic bloodlines being targeted. And I think that's a great place to start in the conversation, Jack. We look at the Middle East today. We look at Iraq. Modern-day Iraq is Mesopotamia, where these legends of the past, of these gods, these wars of the gods took place. Today we see a war of the worlds taking place in Iraq. And people are asking questions. William Henry has written some stuff on the internet that has attracted some interest with his articles about a potential Stargate. I have read articles about a potential underground when Saddam Hussein was the ruler there. This is when he had come up with this information after Saddam was removed, after we invaded. I don't remember hearing so much about the underground after that. And I can't help but wonder if there's something in Iraq today that links to the ancient world. And so there may be men out there, Jack, that know the answers to some of these questions that I hope will step forward.
Yes, I hope so. I think that there's no question now in my mind that certainly there is some power that causes mankind to do things that really make no sense. If you look at what's taking place in our world today, there's just so many things that don't make sense. If we look at the United States and what's taking place in Washington, D.C., then the decisions of our government to do the things that we're now doing is certainly not beneficial to our nation or to our citizens or to mankind as a whole. And I've gone into some detail in my book about how I think there's pretty good evidence now that the Annunaki have an entire underground civilization on this earth, and there's been some evidence that they have mind control machines. There's certainly obvious evidence on the surface of our earth that they watch our every move. They monitor us through our telephones, through the internet, all kind of ways. And so I believe that that's part of their genetic engineering experiment, and that they have kept great detail about how they're altering our DNA to turn us into the robotic-like beings that they intend to turn us into.
In Tom Horn's book,
I do think that I want to mention one thing. I do think that that's an initial step that we need to take very quickly is to elect Ron Paul president of this nation in 2012. Ron Paul and I happened to be medical partners for 20 years in Lake Jackson. He is also an obstetrician gynecologist, and we practiced medicine together for 20 years. Ron is brutally honest, and he does understand, perhaps not the story of the Annunaki. I have sent him a book, but he hasn't had time to read it as yet.
Yeah, I was curious
and
what
I don't
Ron
know
thought.
what his opinion about that is going to be, but I do know that that would be a wonderful step, because he happens to be chairman of the House subcommittee that monitors our Federal Reserve banking system. And he is the first person in my lifetime who has made any effort at all to look into the shenanigans of our Federal Reserve banking system, and he's got a bill before Congress now to at least have them audited, and there's some hope that he can get that bill passed. I think if the American people realize what's happening to us in regards to our monetary system, that would be a nice start in trying to turn things around and change some things in our world.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. Where's the gold? Is there any gold at Fort Knox? We see this pattern with the Annunaki and using human slaves to mine gold. And then we are put on this gold standard. And then, of course, now we're wondering, is there any gold to back up what they claim they have? And we find out they've rigged the laws so they can do whatever they want and leave the taxpayer holding the bag. And then we find out this guy that was the head of the IMF, he allegedly violently rapes a woman in a hotel in New York City. I mean, this is the caliber of these individuals, and that's great. I wonder if there is anything, Jack, to shape-shifting, or the things that David Icke talks about, if during this alleged attack he shifted form and, I don't know, alerted the authorities that perhaps something else was going on, but I can only speculate. But going back into this conversation of gold in the Federal Reserve, you write a little bit about that in the book, you know, just this tie between the ancient world and today, and now all this debt that we're being left with. And wondering where the gold is.
I'm sorry, Alex. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay, Bill. Bill, okay. I think you may have had me on mute. Am I back?
Okay, now you're back, yes.
Okay, I was referencing gold in the ancient world. I'm not sure at what point I was cut off, but I was referencing gold in the ancient world, and it's linked to the Federal Reserve. And that's asking the question, where is the gold now? Is there any gold at Fort Knox? This consistent link with gold being our lives, and it's tied to the people being enslaved.
Well, my understanding is there is still gold at Fort Knox. However, the United States government does not own that gold anymore. The Federal Reserve Bank loaned us so much money, and our national debt and indebtedness to them became so great that my understanding now is that all of the gold in Fort Knox was put up for collateral. And so basically the Annunaki now own that gold. Sitchin has tremendous evidence that there was that the Annunaki, the old Annunaki, the original ones who came to Earth, exited, left here between the years of 610 and 560 B.C. From about 50 years to haul all the gold off, or as much as they took at that time. But if we look at ancient civilizations who were supposed to have tremendous amounts of gold, King Solomon, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incas, all of that gold had to go somewhere. That much gold cannot just disappear. There's no telling how much gold they've already removed from the earth, but their plans are to get it all.
And for the possibility of being used for their atmosphere?
Well, that was their original intent. But again, you know, I believe that for some reason, I don't know why they did it, but for some reason they did write the spiritual literature. Our Bible, if you look in Revelations, talks about New Jerusalem. Well, New Jerusalem is apparently the city that they plan to live in. I think New Jerusalem is going to be on earth. I think it is going to be primarily underground. But the book of Revelation says this is a city of pure gold. Now, and it's huge. It's 1,500 miles long, 1,500 miles wide. If we take those measurements to build a city of that size out of pure gold, that takes a lot of gold.
You mentioned in the book that National Geographic in January 2011 found a underground area with its own climate, I believe, its own atmosphere.
Yes, this cave that was found, actually, the pictures are pretty amazing. It not only has atmosphere, it has clouds. These clouds are underground, so it obviously, they produce rain. And that brings something to mind that I would also like to mention, which seems strange at first glance, that the Bible also talks about this great war that is supposed to take place sometime before the end of the age of Pisces, called the Battle at Armageddon. I believe that is a nuclear war, probably. But we also see the devastation of our earth in many, many ways. Our water is being polluted, our atmosphere is being polluted, our food is being polluted. So you would say, well, if the Annunaki are going to take over the earth, why would they destroy the atmosphere? The book of Revelations talks about destroying all the fish in the seas and the oceans and the rivers and the streams and so forth. But the surface of this earth is not important to the Annunaki. I believe that they live underground. They prefer to live underground. So their atmosphere, and they have fresh water, they have their crops, their fields, their food, etc., all underground. Their lifespans are also so long that I believe they realize that they can replenish the atmosphere of the earth and the surface things of the earth once they eliminate mankind and get us out of the way. So I don't think they're in the least bit concerned about contaminating the surface.
You know, what comes to mind when you're talking about all this is H.G. Wells and his, yes,
well,
the time machine.
There were a lot of things in his book that seem to be coming to pass today.
Yes, exactly. He's also the author of The War of the Worlds, which some allege was used to some sort of a beta test to see how the American public would react. I guess this goes in a new area of conversation, Project Bluebeam. How the people would react if they were told that there was an alien invasion. You know, I was listening to, and I rarely do, NPR, and they were talking with a woman named Ann Jacobson. She wrote a book entitled Area 51, and she was talking about one of her sources in this book, talking about what really happened at Roswell. And she said, her source said that what it was a genetically engineered, what was meant to look like a 13-year-old alien, and that it was engineered by the Soviets with the help of Dr. Menzela, who was a Nazi scientist. And it's interesting to see some of these revelations come out on NPR. I surely ask myself why. We're seeing a lot more alien extraterrestrial stuff now in the media, and even pop culture. You know, Jack, there's a song called E.T. by Kate Perry, and she's basically singing about getting screwed by an alien in a very romantic way. And this is something that young children are listening to. It's very pornographic, and it's talking about sex with an alien. And then we see strange films like The Knowing, where Nicolas Cage, before Solar Flare, don't know if you saw that film, have you seen it?
No, I have not. I have read a little bit about it.
Gives his children to the aliens to save them from destruction, because the solar flare is coming and it ends the world. And there's just so much what appears to me to be alien propaganda. The sexualization of a young female on TV, I find it disgusting, but I see it more often, and I think it's more in the old adage of sex sells. There's something very evil that I feel is on the earth right now that operates in this box that the people are watching as we speak, as they channel surf. There's things that are deliberately put there. The question is, who's putting that stuff there, and why is the feminine, the goddess, constantly targeted, that which brings us life, that which gives birth to man, Why is that the womb being targeted? And I've been asking myself these questions, Jack, more and more the last couple of years, because it seems to get worse and worse and worse. And I just cannot believe that it's an accident. I cannot believe that it's not coordinated, but because I can see its effect on the population. I can see how women emulate what they see on TV and how monkey men emulate what they see on TV. And they think watching the UFC makes you tough. They think barking like a dog at the latest football game makes them a man. And I'm seeing these simulated ooga booga male-female archetypes. And so it's very interesting to see this play out.
Well, and I believe that the truth is, Alex, that we actually have the proof of that now. It's difficult to go through all of Sitchin's stuff and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the ancient spiritual writings, but if one takes the time to do so, what you have just said, we actually have evidence that that's absolutely the truth, and that it is the Annunaki who are doing these things. You mentioned a movie. There's another movie that became quite popular that is almost prophetic, except they were clever enough to reverse the roles. If you've seen the movie Avatar.
I saw that about a month ago.
Well, Avatar is very prophetic in a way about what's going to happen to our world, except the roles are reversed. That there, human beings come in and destroy this world of the aliens, and just the opposite is going to occur on this earth. The aliens are come to destroy the world of mankind.
True, yes, yeah. You know something else that comes to mind, and I'm just now getting into the series now, Lord of the Rings. Here we have a story that also mirrors the Bible in many ways, and I think it was Mordu. Mordu was the place, I think, where these orgs were being generated, and Mordu, I believe, was underground, or it was in a cave where these things were happening, where Solomon, reminds me of King Solomon, was creating these wicked forces of destruction. There's this one particular scene where this little ugly demon thug tells Solomon that the orgs in the army is ready, and then he says that the king has evacuated the castle and they have women and children, which brings a mighty smile to Solomon's face. And I think there's a lot of things that hopefully people should be getting from films like Lord of the Rings, because these things that we think are science fiction aren't really science fiction. They're direct takes on the world that we live in today, or they're things happening perhaps in another dimension, but nonetheless they're there in pop culture because of the collective zeitgeist. And it's clear that there's a lot of alien stuff in pop culture today that does seem to, again, lean on the propaganda end, fear of the alien invasion. And some people are wondering if that's what's happening now with these holograms that are appearing in China, that are appearing in Russia, the spirals in the sky. And that's something that we're really trying to figure out here on the show, exactly what is going on. There are many people that are awaiting more and more alien visitations to the planet, UFO sightings, and then we have obvious uses of holograms taking place. What is your take on what the Annunaki that are underground, as you say, and probably controlling the satellites and running this whole eye-in-the-sky Big Brother apparatus, what do you think their plan is here with this fake alien invasion script?
Well, I think one thing that people need to understand to start with is there's very good evidence now that there is a natural entrance to the underground at the South Pole, and they apparently are able to enter their underground domain through waterways, oceans, and seas as well. And we have many pictures now of UFOs that are coming up out of an ocean or a sea or a body of water of some type. And there have been so many UFO sightings over the years that if all of those sightings were aliens coming to Earth from outer space, we would have aliens coming here from many different places, and I don't think we could have missed all of them. I believe that the vast majority of UFOs are real, but they're coming from underground. I believe that these are the Anunnaki coming up to do whatever they need done. Certainly certainly, I think most of the abductions, and some of these, like the woman that you talked about, having sex with an alien, I think most of the abductions have something to do with their genetic experiment and altering our DNA in such ways that they get the end result that they want. But I believe that most of those UFOs are coming from underground, and for whatever reason.
Well, yeah,
So
this is...
I kind of
continue.
lost my train of thought. Get me back on track. What was your original question?
Well, there are so many, and we are going in so many different directions, but just the speculation of why they would want to engineer this fake extraterrestrial invasion. I think the answer to some might be obvious, but it's something that we're continually seeing played out incrementally. Extraterrestrial invasion scripts in Hollywood, shows like V coming out, women like Kate Perry singing to 12-year-old girls and boys about having sex with aliens, total disgusting, pornographic, extraterrestrial getting it on. You know, and all this stuff going on, we're going, why? Why? Why are they targeting the young with all of these alien images? There's even other cartoons where they start transforming into reptilians. It's another version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's some radiation, and it mutates them. Very strange, this theme of radiation mutating the humans.
It is strange, and I don't know the answer to why exactly, but there is a very interesting fact about the occult, and that is that they must gain some kind of sadistic pleasure in telling us what they're going to do to us.
And we see right there the old CNI and all the networks.
Before they have sacrifices or murder somebody, they let that person know in advance that they're going to do it. The Annunaki have certainly let us know in advance through spiritual literature what they're going to do to us. And if we look at our world today, there are signs and symbols everywhere telling us that they are here and what they're doing. The evidence is just overwhelming now. And I don't know, excuse me, exactly why they choose to inform us beforehand of what they're going to do, but they've told us very clearly that they're going to form a new world order, and if we allow that, if they get that new world order in place, mankind is in a lot of trouble.
And they're testing like a boxer. He's jabbing to see if he can go in for that punch. And see, they're testing, they're beta testing, they're pulling 9/11, they're seeing how stupid are these slaves. Oh my God, we're going to do war games on the very same day, we're going to do war games, Bill. We're going to do all this. We're going to make that thing come down and literally just like this, right here. We're going to go down like that in free fall. We're going to see how stupid and retarded these... You know what? Let's go take on Waco. Let's burn some women and children. Let's see how much these slaves are really going to stand down now. Oh, yeah. And then of course... let's see how many of them are going to take a vaccine. Let's give them a cookie and tell them we killed Osama bin Laden and see how they tear off their clothes and sit there and run around naked like they're chickens with their head cut off in West Virginia and some of these other campuses where they got fires going, and it's just like Lord of the Flies, Jack. I think we're seeing these beta tests right now with these incredible stories and how much of a hold they have on consciousness.
Well, you're exactly right, and you know, part of it may simply be just instilling fear.
Sure.
We're certainly much less capable of trying to compete with them and trying to alter our fate if we're afraid.
Yeah, and we have become the great Americult. Certainly spelled with 3 Ks instead of 1 C, the great Americult. And that's the great thing about being able to do the show with you, Jack, because more and more people are unplugging from this cult and are seeking their higher self and all this. And truly, what does it mean to have a true connection with let's give this some airtime, the Supreme Being? To go beyond the word God, a Supreme Being, above all, that which even created the fallen gods to test us in this earthly realm. My intuition tells me what this is a big test for each one of us individually. If we're going to break through the cage that in many ways is co-constructed by our own mind, by our own misconceptions and delusions that cages maintain. But there's ways to hack the codes of this matrix, which many, Jack, have written about as being a holographic universe, which
Right.
Talbot's book was about, that we're creating all this with our thoughts. So if they're trying to mind control us to help us co-create this prison, we got to start thinking about things dramatically different. And I guess as we segue into part two, participate in the grandest rebellion. Now, where do you want to begin with taking off this collective ball and gag and beginning this grandest rebellion?
I think that we would all be absolutely shocked at what powers that they have given us with our human mind if we could ever get it clear enough to make proper use of it.
You talk about that. You talk about getting the glass of water, being like the mind, clear, that there's so many ways that our minds are dirty, but we want clarity first to begin this mission, this vision quest.
Absolutely. And I believe that we can compete with the Anunnaki and we can alter our fate if we can get a group of people together who can get their minds clear enough to put our heads together. I certainly don't have the answers, don't claim to, but I do think that mankind collectively can compete with them.
Yeah, mankind can do great many things with its intellect. That's why they're trying to constantly steer our intellect in this direction. We have to become better organizers. That's what I'm starting to really feel exactly on the local level. I know we've been kind of saying this for years, and it's getting to be cliche, but some things just don't go away.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important that we stop killing each other and we stop participating in these wars for them, because we're killing off ourselves, plus we're making them billions of dollars every time we fight one of these wars. We need to change our entire focus from each other to start focusing on what the Anunnaki are doing and what they're planning to do to us. And once we can change that focus of a group of people, then perhaps we can compete.
So if they're feeding off our fear, we have to starve them out. We have to starve them out and no longer allow them to be hitting our buttons. I see people right now getting so agitated, Jack. They are on the edge of their seats. They're hearing about rapture. They're hearing about doomsday. They're hearing about, well, they were hearing about Iran. Now soon they're going to be hearing about China, which we brought up by design to play out this in-game New World Order potential depopulation agenda scenario. But they're hearing about so many things. They're being told they're a virus and that they should hate other children if they see them because they have a large carbon footprint. Say look and scowl because they're upset that they can't have a kid. People are definitely up against the wall right now, Jack, and my heart goes out to them in the grocery store when I see how sad they are with their little carrots and their little sack of potato chips, looking all pretty on the outside but looking so sad on the inside. I know you know what I'm talking about, Jack. It's very interesting going to the grocery stores these days.
Absolutely. They have three tremendous tools that they use against us, or to use to influence us: government, religion, and the secret societies. Those three tools just do us tremendous harm because they can manipulate us and control us and make us believe all kind of falsehoods by using these three very, very powerful tools. And as difficult as it is, we need to find out the truth about what they're doing with governments. I'm not talking about just the United States government. They control the governments worldwide.
Right.
They control the religious organizations worldwide. And we have absolute evidence now that every one of these secret societies that people talk about, the Illuminati, the Bilderbergs, the Skull and Bones, the Freemasons, on and on and on, are just branches of the original secret society that was formed by Enki, called the Brotherhood of the Serpent. And they've formed so many different little secret societies, but they still control all of them, and they have been able to use those as powerful weapons to manipulate us and to really inflict great harm as far as our spiritual well-being is concerned.
Sure. And just to go back here, you have some quotes that you've had in your book, and there's a famous one from Woodrow Wilson. For those that say there are no evil great powers out there, there are no great conspiracies that exist beyond the reach of mankind. Well, here's something from Woodrow Wilson from page 186. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something and somebody, or afraid of somebody and are afraid of something. They know there's a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. And so that was Woodrow Wilson. And then we have a number of other quotes as well. But I want to mention earlier Tom Horn, that's been on the show before. He's also been an exorcist at one point in his life. His website is RaidersNewsNetwork.com. In his book, Apollyon Rising 2012, he speculates that the great genetic engineering experiment with food, with chimeras, with these crossbreeds, these different mixing animal and human, is to create the perfect mind-controlled clone where perhaps a demon could walk into that body and essentially be a walk-in. So certain forms of life or entities could live for a very, very long time. And I know that might be out of the realm of possibility for some people, but it really raises the question, what is really going on here with this organized system where there might be forms of life on this planet that are living longer than humans?
It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility in my mind. In fact, I think it's very likely that those type things are occurring. That's, again, part of their genetic experiment that they use. And you know, we have a few stories of people who have appeared on this earth over long periods of time. I don't know if you've read William Branley's book, The Gods of Eden, but in The Gods of Eden, Bramley, by the way, Bramley has done an extremely good job of tracking the secret societies from the Brotherhood of the Serpent right on down to, he mentions many of them and how they came into being and what they're doing in his book. But he also mentions a very interesting character in his book called Saint Germain. And Saint Germain is a very interesting individual who has appeared on Earth hundreds of years apart and done some amazing things. But yeah, I think that type thing is taking place. I think there are still Annunaki here who come up from underground and mix in with human beings, and they're probably
but I guess in the end,
it's everywhere. Yeah.
I guess all in the end, it comes down to why are we here on Earth right now, going through this in some sort of a genetic experiment where we are slaves in some sort of amnesia of our past lives. We are, if we do have past lives, I believe that we certainly have been through some experiences before we got here. But we're obviously in these very unique spacesuits, biological spacesuits that seem to be quarantined to a planet that we collectively have chosen to call Earth. Though there's going to be a lot of if what you're saying is correct, disappointed souls out there, Jack, when they pass over to the other side and find out that they're not going to get so many virgins. They're not going to find themselves in a simplistic heaven or a simplistic hell. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of very surprised souls at that particular point in time. But I say, why wait till you pass on to find the answers? I say find out who the true God, what the true God consciousness is for yourself, while we still kind of are here in this physical form, instead of thinking about Judgment Day or the end of the world. It seems to me that, Jack, and that's my story and many others, 9/11 woke many people up. In this last generation, there was a great evil, a very organized, wicked evil out there that was capable of bringing the people to war with each other over a lie and to convince people of a silly thing. You know, just buildings falling down in on themselves, planes hitting them, no air defense. This is normal. This is normal. Yes, this is normal. And here we are today, though, I believe, on the spiritual mission to kind of help people get out of the fight. as they want to bring us up to this in-game scenario and play out the book of Revelations the way they want to. I think we're trying to, Jack, pull people out of the fire, and I hope that that's what people watching this show do with this information, that are overwhelmed by this and afraid that they instead are filled with passion and fire, good anger at the Annunaki, that they want to pull their fellow brethren, their fellow sisters out of the fire, out of the wars, out of the divisions, out of the fake right-left paradigms, and truly into a consciousness of love.
Well, and you know, I'm optimistic and very pleased that there are people like you now and many others who are beginning to recognize this fact that there is an evil power that is controlling us, and it's not Satan of the Bible. But the interesting thing to me about that is that, like you said, mankind recognized that at least as far back as Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson wrote about it. Yet, we've never been able to overcome all of the deception about religion, government, secret societies, that sort of thing, to ever focus on that and see what is really going on and see can we do something about it. But we've recognized that it is there now for a good number of years.
You know, this whole life thing may also be a test in creation. I'm starting to think, if we have what made us comfortable for so long removed from us, in a way we're forced to create something out of that nothingness. And they say that all matter begins with thought. Well, say the future, the rest of our lives, a new beginning, not an end of the world, has to begin with thought, with consciousness, with that spark. So we've got to start that spark. We've got to get that fire going in the minds of men to build a new world without a new world order. And it all is very possible if we organize with people that are of a similar understanding. And there's many people in the city, Jack, that are of a similar understanding, which reminds me, I know you're interested in coming to Portland. There are people that do catch a show every week, and I want you to mention a little of some of the things that you might talk about, or some of the things that could be accomplished if you came to Portland, if we generated enough support.
I would love to come to Portland, and I would be willing to talk about any aspect of the book or any aspect of the Annunaki that I'm aware of. I'm extremely interested in doing something that in the book I call the Grandest Rebellion, which is really just getting a group of people together to focus on the Annunaki, what they're doing, trying to gather as much evidence as we can, and then putting our heads together and seeing if we can come up with a game plan to compete with them.
Absolutely.
And so
I want some of the people listening and
meeting with anybody anywhere in this world if we can put some like-minded people together to focus on those topics.
Right. And for those watching, we obviously are going to need a venue for such a grand speech and lecture discussion. And of course, like minds meeting like minds, which is the most beautiful thing. When I saw David Icke speak in Bellingham, Washington last year, the best part of it was the conversations with people that came from all over the world to see this very unique individual. The cool thing about if you come to the Jack Pruett event is most of these people are actually going to be living in Portland, Oregon. And so certainly, folks, get outside the box. Get away from the TV set, engage in life. Remember to share this information with others. Remember, you can find the others, and there's all different types of meetup groups that take place in the city. You know, there are some groups that used to get together in the past that talked about similar subjects. But whether I'm organizing it or others, it certainly is something that can be done. Are you planning on doing any other traveling, Jack, around the country?
Well, I would certainly like to. Again, it's a matter of generating interest, getting enough people together to understand the truth. You know, I guess in my wildest dreams, I would like for groups from all over the world to come to Portland and us fill up the biggest convention hall y'all got over there and talk about this stuff.
Well, let's try to make that happen, and let's give you some good luck to getting on coast to coast. Let's everybody can practice some creative visualization here and see Dr. Jack Pruett on Coast to Coast AM with George Norris. So we'll just put that out there to the universe. But it certainly is an era of time, Jack, where people are discussing such things. There's an old friend of mine. His name is Clyde Lewis, and I remember going out to eat with him after doing shows on Access TV here. I remember listening to him when I was 23. He was one of my inspirations to come in and doing a show on Access TV. He never gave up during his most challenging moments, during his most darkest days, having been fired from multiple radio stations simply because they were going through a format change. In the era of radio today, it's harder and harder to get a job, especially when you're the chupacabra, alien, ghost guy, demonology guy, and with a little bit of info in the New World Order all mixed together. A very interesting blend of information. Now, there are all these people crying about media censorship and how they're taking this video down and taking that video down, but you also, this guy's now Monday through Friday, 9 to midnight. And although we may agree to disagree on certain subjects, I'm still aware in my mind that there are people that are thinking about things that they have never thought about before or heard about before simply because of one guy on the radio. So through one program or one film or one book, ideas blossom into larger ideas and more complex ideas. And it's also been said that this is how through dictatorships throughout the past, when something couldn't be directly said, it was said through art. It was said through analogies. It was said through parables. So truth, to one degree or another, has always existed throughout time, and we can always count on that innate human knowing that does seem to know a certain innate right versus wrong. There are some sheeple that voluntarily stay in the collective Chuck E. Cheese balls, plastic balls of life, going into the meat grinder, but there are many others that are certainly cognitively flipping on.
Well, you mentioned George Norrie, and of course he reaches a tremendously large audience. I did send George an email and ask him if I could send him a book. I'll make a plea: if anybody in the audience has an in with
right.
Norrie, then I would love to get a word in with him, because he does reach a large audience.
And again, people can go, hey, it's Clear Channel. But then again, it's like it's still something where the market, in one degree or another, sometimes does decide what's on the radio. If people voice their opinions, that they want to hear someone on the radio, a certain guest, sometimes that has an impact. And I guess I'm bringing this full circle, Jack Pruett, because we are at the aftermath of this whole fake rapture thing. And so we have way too many people focused on the end of the world right now instead of beginning a new world without a new world order. Now, there's some things that are...
Time is rather short. I think this new world order could come into being if something's not done fairly quickly.
Right.
Certainly within the next 90 years at the most, and I fear it'll be much sooner than that.
And we have a situation with China that I believe is coming. New World Order using Chinese peacekeepers one day to police America on their own soil after they screw us. There have been deals going on with China for years. China was brought up to play this role, clearly. The UN one-child policy, that's resulting in 20 to 30 million more men than women. One day they're going to want wives. This whole social experiment with China is a complete disaster, but it's all part of the New World Order's master plan. I just hope, Jack, to help more people unplug, and just through the good deeds that I'm doing, I kind of do have a faith in a higher power, a deity, whether you call it God or whatnot, a supreme consciousness above these false gods that are helping some of us out along the way. I think, isn't it important to have faith in that regard instead of someone that promises us fake change and counterfeit bills like Osama bin Laden, bin Bama, bin Bush, and all these fake villains and fake heroes? Shouldn't we start believing in the ultimate consciousness, that godlike energy within?
I absolutely agree with you, and I certainly am not an atheist, and I believe that there is a supreme being, entity, consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. And so I talk a lot in my book about religion and how harmful that is to us. That does not mean that I don't believe in that there's is a supreme being, consciousness entity.
Right. You're just going, wait a minute.
We need that entity's help, so we need to learn to plug into that.
You're just going, hey, wait a minute. What kind of God tells a few people they're the chosen ones and then punishes them for years and years, saying, do this and maybe I'll give you something, but doesn't, all the while promising them a lollipop that doesn't exist? And so we're just raising questions, folks, as to what is truly the work of the Almighty. Jack, I want to thank you for coming on. I wish you luck getting on Coast to Coast, and I encourage people to email me after the show if they have an interest in bringing you to town, and perhaps we can talk more about this down the road.
Very good, Alex. Look forward to it, and I hope to get to see you in Portland soon.